Let's talk about Michelle Thompson. No illegality has been proven against Michelle Thompson over her property dealings, and she denies any wrongdoing. But if you knew then what you know now about her business practices, would you have supported her being a candidate?
Look, you can ask that question about a whole variety of different things if you know. I mean, 2020 hindsight is a wonderful thing. None of us have it. I didn't know about the allegations that have been made. I'm equally determined, though, that Michelle Thompson, like any citizen would be entitled to, is entitled to the presumption of innocence. There is a police investigation underway into property transactions that she was involved in right now. I think it's right not to prejudge that. Let that take its course, and then once it's concluded, if there are any decisions that I require to take, I won't shy away from taking them.
Would you have her back in the party then?
Well, if I was to answer that question right now, that would prejudge the outcome of an investigation. Now, she's not in the party. Now, she took that decision voluntarily, and I think it was the right one for her to take, to withdraw from the SNP whip. I think we have to wait and see what the outcome of the investigation is before we make decisions about the future. That's the right and proper way of doing things. I know it's not perhaps fashionable these days to say that politicians should be treated fairly and have the presumption of innocence, but I happen to think they're entitled to it.
You said in an interview in the Holyrood magazine that you could contest the next two elections. You could be in power for, 10 years or more. Do you plan to go on and on and on like Margaret Thatcher?
I don't think there's many things, apart from our gender, that would people would draw comparisons between me and Margaret Thatcher on. Look, what I said, I was asked the question, I think I was asked the question, what would my legacy be? I said, I've been First Minister for less than a year. And I was asked the question, how long would I like to be First Minister? Well, the answer to that question is, that's up to the people. But if, and it is an if, because I take nothing for granted, I'm re-elected as First Minister next May, then it would be my intention, barring unforeseen circumstances, to contest the election after that. But, whether I serve as First Minister for a year, 2 years, 10 years, that's down to the people of Scotland, and what I've got to do is work as hard as I can to convince people that I'm the best candidate for First Minister, and that's my task, first and foremost, between now and next May.
OK, First Minister, thank you for joining us on Scotland Tonight. Well, joining me now is Stuart Hosey MP, Deputy Leader of the SNP, Saffron Dixon, who joined the party after the referendum, and former Chief of Staff to Alex Salmond, Jeff Aberdeen. Stuart Hosey, the former Deputy Leader of the SNP, Jim Sillars, in the Daily Telegraph tomorrow has accused the SNP leadership of trying to smother debate about a second Indie ref. Is that the case? Is that what you're doing? I mean, why aren't you debating it?
I joined the Scottish National Party 33 years ago, and at every single level of the party, we talk about independence, how to get it, what it can look like to enthuse people. We've just had a referendum, just over a year ago. We respect the outcome, and what Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister, has said is absolutely right. There are things which could trigger a second referendum. There are a number of actions Westminster might do that will increase support for a referendum. But Alex Saffron's right. We've got to respect what happened last year, and when enough of those who voted no start saying yes, we can have a referendum.
But why not debate it, though?
Well, because we're only a year since the last referendum. I think we've got to respect what happened last year. And quite clearly, right now, although there has been a rise in support for independence, we don't have this large and sustained majority in favour of it. And I think it would be wrong to rush into a referendum we might not win.
OK, Angus Robertson took a swipe at Jeremy Corbyn today, saying that, accusing them of kind of copping out by not discussing Trident at the party conference because it was such a big issue and it meant so much to them. Could the same not be said about the SNP not discussing a second independence referendum?
I don't think so, because Nicola Sturgeon addressed it this morning in her opening address to the conference, and what she said is absolutely right. The job of every politician when they're elected is to represent as best they see the constituents, the prevailing views of their constituents. Now she's First Minister, she needs to represent the views of the people of Scotland. And she said, respecting the no vote that happened last year, and said, look, we're going to have a referendum when we think we can win it, and when the people of Scotland decide. The great thing about this is the people of Scotland are always in charge.
How high or how much support does there have to be in the opinion polls, Stuart, before you would call for another referendum? How much support does that have to be? 55%? Evidence?
I wouldn't put a number on it. What I would say, and I think it's actually more important than the number, that there has to be a lead for a sustained period of time. There's no point having one poll with a 2-point lead and everyone thinks that's it. that's not good enough. We had a referendum which we lost. We respect that. So there has to be a change in the public mood, a change in public opinion, and a substantial and sustained lead for independence. At that point, it'll become clear to everybody, not only do the public in Scotland want a referendum, but more importantly, they want to vote yes.
What's your thoughts about that, Saffron? I mean, you know, how high does it have to be in the polls for how long?
Well, I would agree. I think the opinion of the Scottish people, if it was to change and if people in Scotland were to want independence eventually, it would have to be consistent and it would have to be sustained for a generous period of time. I mean, look at just before we had the referendum, poll came out saying that we were going to win it and we didn't. It's not good enough just to have a slight lead in a poll for one section of time. It needs to be consistent, it needs to be strong.
Jeff?
Well, I think there is one challenge in all this for the SNP leadership, in that we now, I think, the SNP this morning is at 114,000 members, which is an unprecedented level. A lot of them joined the party because they want independence. Now, I fully expect on the current trajectory that the SNP will form a government next year. But how long will these new members who joined the party, largely some of them because they want to see independence, rest aside and wait for this to happen? So I think that Stuart, Nicola Sturgeon and indeed John Swinney have a lot of decisions to make about how they appease that membership.
Stuart, how do you appease these members?
It's not about appeasement. Jeff asks a really good question, and I've spoken to many thousands of new members, and the thing that I'm always overjoyed with is they didn't join the SNP to change it. They joined the SNP to be part of it on this journey, and because we are a democratic party, as Jeff knows, they will be fully informed, fully involved, fully engaged.
These new members have a real hunger for independence, Stuart.
We all have a hunger for independence. When I joined the party 33 years ago, I wanted independence. I still want independence. It's not the hunger or desire, it's the ability to deliver that now counts.
It's a difficult line for the SNP leadership to walk, isn't it?
It's going to be very intriguing to watch this and see how this is balanced. I think they've got it right so far. I think Nicola Sturgeon was right. She got it pitch perfect this morning. She said we've got to wait and we've got to see. And that's what her job as First Minister to do. But, you know, in the longer term, there are challenges there, and it's a very intriguing time for politics in Scotland, not just with Jeremy Corbyn, as you mentioned earlier on, but with the SNP in such a dominant position as well.
OK, we'll have to leave it there. Of the Holyrood magazine, Mandy Rhodes, the STV's Holyrood editor, and Colin Mackay, and assistant editor of The Spectator, Isabel Hardman. Thank you all so much for joining me. Colin, can I ask you first of all, what did you think of Nicola Sturgeon's speech? Was she downplaying the idea of a second India ref?
I think at times it seemed like she all but ruled it out in the term of the next Parliament. But I was speaking to her and she was trying to downplay that even. She said, I'm not ruling it out, because there are certain circumstances, particularly if there's a vote in the rest of the UK to opt out of the EU and Scotland votes to stay in. She said that could make the clamour for a second independence referendum absolutely unstoppable. But I think it was a very strong, probably the strongest opening speech of a conference I've come across. There was so much more in it than you would normally get sometimes in a leader's speech in their main speech at conference. That and the promise of building houses, 50,000 new houses during the term of the next Parliament. It was strong stuff, and there's more to come, she says.
Isabel, what do you think about the mood of the conference? I mean, bearing in mind this is the side that lost in the independence referendum last year, but you know, the SNP are riding so high in the polls. You know, they're discussing, you know, another independence referendum.
Yeah, and even though they haven't been able to discuss it as much at fringes as they might have liked, they've still got that shared mission, that sort of common purpose as members, that they all want to see Scottish independence, and that unites them in the way that the other parties aren't as united on one single mission. I think they've been the most upbeat conference that I've been to this year, and one of the things that I found really striking is it's not just that they're upbeat that they've won so many seats in Westminster, it's also that Labour is having such a miserable time because Jeremy Corbyn is unable to unite Labour. That works really well for the SNP.
It's a stark contrast, isn't it? But the SNP do have their troubles as well, don't they? And health, education and Michelle Thompson.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the problem is after 8 years in government, there is going to be a downside at some point. I mean, the opinion polls still have them 30 odd points above everybody else. So the question will be how much the opposition can actually pick apart any problems the SNP have. And so far, they haven't managed to.
Colin, would you agree with that?
So there are problems there. It's just not cutting through to the voters. You know, there was a raft of by-elections just a few weeks ago, and the SNP won 6 out of 7 of them. They were getting swing swings from Labour, swings from other parties as well. So it's just not, and that was after we'd heard about the Michelle Thompson potential row there. So I just don't think it's cutting through the voters. Now, there's 6 months to go till we get into the serious Scottish election campaign. There's plenty of time for that. But the polls suggest at the moment that it's just not working for the opposition.
Do you get the sense, Isabel, that they can just do no wrong?
Well, it's because the opposition is so weak and in so much disarray that there's no one really effectively holding them to account.
But you know, there were a lot of people who wanted to have had a debate on a second independence referendum. They were disappointed that there wasn't that debate. They were happy with what Nicola Sturgeon said in her speech, but they wanted that. So I think there is an element of disappointment. There is an instinctive loyalty to the party leadership. So the line that they've heard from Nicola Sturgeon, who really is undoubtedly the star, not just of this conference, but of the party, and they all recognise that they're willing to go along with that.
Isabel, what do you think about Nicola Sturgeon? Do you think it's the Nicola Sturgeon show?
Well, I think her speech was really, really impressive this morning. It was a good opener for the conference, and she's got another one later this week as well. So she's kind of bookending the conference, and she is a very strong performer. And it's so impressive that she's managed to take over from one strong performer, Alex Salmond, and there hasn't been a dip. It's actually gone through the roof for her. So,
interestingly, she polls for the party much better than Alex Salmond ever did. She draws in a lot more potential supporters from so many different backgrounds.
We're going to have to leave it there. Okay, well, that's all from this special edition of Scotland Tonight.